A reporter crossed the line, insulting Kim Taehyung, and was met with Jungkook's explosive, razor-sharp response on live TV, leaving everyone frozen in silence. "You want to repeat that again about Taehyung?" Jungkook's voice sliced through the tension like broken glass under boots low, but laced with venom. The cameras were rolling. A second earlier, the fluorescent lights of the press room had flickered into static warmth. Journalists leaned forward with their mics. BTS was seated in a semicircle for a rare joint interview during their military hiatus. Jin had just cracked a harmless joke about their new physical training routines. Laughter floated in the air, light and harmless. And then came him the man with the crooked tie and the smug smile. A reporter from a gossip outlet known more for scandal than substance. His question wasn't a question. It was a loaded grenade dressed as a smirk. "I suppose Taehyung is still struggling to keep up with the rest of you," he said with a chuckle, eyes gleaming with bait. "All that art stuff and his emotional breaks. Must be exhausting to carry him." Time stopped. Taehyung blinked. His expression remained unreadable, but the tiny twitch in his jaw betrayed the flicker of pain. Jimin's shoulders tensed. RM's hand clenched on his thigh, silence stretched like a taut wire. Then Jungkook stood. He didn't ask permission. He didn't glance at the PR manager or the camera crew. He didn't even hesitate. His eyes burned with something ancient. Fury, loyalty, the shadow of battles long past and wounds never fully closed. He stepped forward, gaze locked onto the reporter. The room held its breath. "Do you know what it costs to be vulnerable in front of millions?" he said, his voice steady, dangerously quiet. "Do you know what it means to be brave enough to not wear a mask while people like you sell headlines from shadows?" The reporter opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "You want a story?" Jungkook continued, the silence sharpening every syllable. "Here it is. The man you just mocked saved my life more times than I can count. On stage, off stage. When I couldn't speak, he spoke for me. When I broke, he stood." Taehyung's eyes shimmered. "And you? You sit there safe behind your pen, spitting acid, disguised as curiosity." Jungkook leaned closer. "Every inch a weapon now. You don't get to say his name." Someone in the back audibly gasped. The PR team moved finally, but no one dared interrupt. "Not yet. Taehyung works harder in 1 hour than you've worked in your entire career of cowardice. He paints with pain you could never understand. And if I ever hear you reduce him to a soundbite again, I'll make sure no one ever forgets your name for all the wrong reasons." Silence thundered across the room. The reporter shifted, flushed red, then white, then ghost. Jungkook turned. He didn't say another word. He walked back to his chair beside Taehyung, sat down slowly. Taehyung hadn't moved, but his breathing was shaky. He looked at Jungkook for a long moment, then dropped his eyes, his hand brushing lightly against Jungkook's under the table. Jungkook didn't flinch. No apology was given. None was needed. Not to the press. Not today. It was J-Hope who broke the silence with a nervous laugh, trying to lighten the mood. "Well, that's definitely not going in the official transcript." The room erupted some laughter, some stunned murmurs, others typing furiously to catch up. But Jungkook didn't smile. His jaw was still tense. The fire hadn't gone out. The price of defense. Later, in the hallway outside, Taehyung stopped mid-step. "Why did you do that?" Jungkook turned to him, brows furrowed. "Because you wouldn't have." Taehyung tilted his head. "You think I wouldn't stand up for you?" "No," Jungkook said, a half smile cracking through. "I think you would have forgiven him." Taehyung didn't deny it. "And you won't." "I don't need to," Jungkook replied. "I just need them to know who they're talking about." That night, the clip went viral before the press conference even ended. The hashtags flooded every platform. Fans cried. Critics were silenced, and Taehyung, quiet, composed, misunderstood, stood taller the next time he faced a camera, not because of the headlines, but because someone he trusted had spoken what he'd buried for years. And the world had finally listened. The silence in the dressing room wasn't empty. It was pressurized like the tight calm before thunder cracks the sky. The door had just shut behind them. Jungkook stood with his back to it, chest rising and falling like a fighter, pacing his corner before round two. Taehyung sat in the makeup chair, back straight, hands clasped between his knees. The reflection in the mirror didn't blink. They were alone. "I told you not to do that," Taehyung said softly, voice as delicate as charcoal dust, barely audible over the hum of the overhead light. Jungkook's head dropped for a second, then tilted back against the door with a hard thud. "You're welcome," he replied, voice laced with restraint. Taehyung turned around in the chair, one elbow propped against the counter as he looked at him. "You think I'm not used to being talked down to? I've been called worse than emotional in more languages than I can count. That wasn't your fight." "No," Jungkook snapped. "But it became mine the second he said your name like it was disposable." A beat passed. Taehyung's lips parted, but nothing came out. Jungkook pushed off the door. "You're angry." Taehyung shook his head once. "No, I'm scared." That silenced Jungkook in a way no explosion could. "Scared they'll turn this into something else," Taehyung said. "You know that they'll spin it like you're unstable, or that I needed defending like I'm fragile." "You're not," Jungkook said. "But that doesn't mean you should be humiliated and stay quiet about it." Taehyung looked at him. "Do you think I'm weak?" Jungkook exhaled sharply and took 2 steps forward. "I think you're stronger than anyone in this room. That's the whole point. And that's what pisses me off, because they see your art, your softness, your elegance, and they mistake it for fragility. But it takes steel to be you." There it was, the moment the tension cracked, but not with relief, with pain. "You know what hurts?" Taehyung whispered. "That I believed it sometimes. That maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not enough." Jungkook's face fell. "Don't say that. I'm being honest. So be honest with me," Jungkook said, stepping closer. "Why are you afraid of being defended? Is it because deep down you think they're right?" Taehyung didn't answer, not directly. Instead, he stood, facing Jungkook toe-to-toe. "You know what I've had to become to survive this industry? A mask. 1,000 masks. And every time I show something real, like my anxiety, my detachment, my silence, they call me unstable. They clip it and post it like it's entertainment. So I learned to keep my mouth shut." "And I didn't," Jungkook said, not backing down. "And I won't ever. You think I wouldn't do the same for you?" Taehyung's voice rose, a fire igniting. "You think I didn't defend you when they said your tattoos made you unmarketable? When they told you to hide them for brand deals? Or when they said your dancing was too raw? You think I didn't sit in silence in boardrooms and burn inside while they reduced you to the youngest?" Jungkook's mouth opened, then closed. Then he, Saturday, Taehyung, stood over him now. "You're not the only one who gets angry." There was a long pause before Jungkook spoke again, this time with no armor. "I don't want you to ever feel alone again. Not in that room, not on stage, not with me." "I don't," Taehyung said. "That's what scares me. You'd ruin yourself for me. You'd burn it all down." Jungkook looked up. His voice came out quieter this time, but sharper. "You think I wouldn't?" Taehyung didn't answer. He didn't need to. His eyes said everything. The unspoken truth. Suddenly, the door opened. Jimin stood there, looking like he just walked into the middle of a thunderstorm. He said, blinking. "I was coming to see if either of you wanted to eat, but I think I'll come back when the oxygen levels are above dangerous." Neither of them laughed. Jimin sighed and stepped in anyway, closing the door. "Okay, what happened?" Jungkook looked at Taehyung. Taehyung sat back down. Jimin pulled a chair around and sat cross-legged like a therapist, preparing for a long session. Jungkook went full Avengers on the reporter. Jimin muttered, "Saw that." Taehyung looked like he'd been suckered, punched by his own feelings. "Saw that too. What I didn't see was why both of you look like someone just confessed murder." Taehyung rubbed his face. "Because we're not just dealing with a headline. We're dealing with years. And shame," Jungkook added. "And fear," Taehyung said. Jimin tilted his head. "Fear of what?" Taehyung hesitated. "That if we don't protect each other from the outside, we'll start breaking on the inside." The silence returned, heavier this time. It was RM who walked in next. He didn't knock. He never did when he was worried. His gaze scanned the room in a second. "Media's exploding," he said. "Hype's trying to control the narrative. They want us to post a statement." Jungkook looked at him. "Whose name's on the statement?" "Yours." "Let them wait." Namjoon gave him a long stare. "They won't." Jungkook stood. "Then let them fire me." Everyone froze. "You don't mean that," RM said. Jungkook stepped closer, voice ice cold. "Don't I?" "No. Let's say it. Let's say I've had enough of pretending, of apologizing for reacting like a human. If Hype thinks it's okay to let the press strip us bare and sit silent when we bleed, they can find someone else to be their global puppet." The room crackled. Jimin whispered, "Kook, we've survived this long together." Jungkook turned to him, voice shaking now. "Then why do I still feel like we're one interview away from falling apart?" No one answered. Because they all felt it, too. The CEO, seated at the far end of the long table, fingers steepled under his chin, hadn't said a word until now. His voice was a low rumble of absolute authority. cutting through the anxiety in the room. It's time we reminded them who owns the house. The room tensed. A new directive was issued silently. Not an official punishment, not yet, but something far more insidious. Control, narrative, divide, the internal lockdown. Jungkook walked out of the conference room, the metallic tang of rage still sharp on his tongue. He expected a confrontation, but when he reached the private waiting lounge, the area was eerily silent. RM, Jin, J-Hope, Jimin, and Yoongi were all there, but they weren't talking. They were just watching him. "They've locked down the immediate response," RM said, his voice clipped, holding a phone that was clearly off the corporate network. "No statements, no official posts. They're isolating the incident. And us. They tried to pin it all on me," Jungkook stated, his fists flexing. "They want a controlled narrative, a simple burnout story for Taehyung, and a reckless rebel tag for me." Jimin stepped forward, his expression a complicated mix of support and frustration. "We saw what you did, Kook. We watched the stream. It was necessary. But you know what this means, right? You gave them the leverage they always wanted. Instability. We are unstable," Jungkook snapped, the volume making the others flinch. "We've been performing through a paper-thin facade for years. They called Taehyung's pain branding and my defense recklessness. They didn't even blink." Yoongi, who had been leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, pushed off and spoke, his voice unusually strained. "I don't disagree with you, but you just handed them the knife to cut us apart. They'll try to frame this as V and Jungkook versus the rest of the group and the company." "Let them try," Jungkook challenged. "Maybe they should see what happens when we stop pretending to be puppets." Jin, always the pillar of composure, placed a hand on Jungkook's shoulder. "Hey, stop. You need to breathe. We're a team. Always. But we fight smarter. They're not attacking your loyalty. They're attacking the brand structure. We need to defend both." The quiet in the villa. Across the city, Taehyung was quiet. Not calm, just quiet. He sat on the balcony of the secluded villa Hybe had reluctantly arranged for him, nestled somewhere outside of Seoul. No cameras, no reporters, just wind, just breath. He held a cup of tea in his hands, but it had long gone cold. He hadn't checked social media in days. His body remembered things, even when his mind tried to numb them. The way Jungkook's chest had felt against his shoulder, the way Jimin's hand had trembled as he reached out, the sound of Yoongi's voice when he said, "We've all been breaking, just differently." Then his phone buzzed. A single notification from Jungkook, a voice memo. He hesitated, thumb hovering. Then he pressed play. Jungkook's voice, raw and low. "I know you need time, but I need you to know this. They're already writing your story without you, and I can't stop them all. But if I have to burn down everything we built just to protect the real you, I will. I don't care what it costs me." Taehyung closed his eyes. The memo wasn't a comfort, it was a promise that threatened to undo him. Jungkook's love was a beautiful, devastating force. It demanded a sacrifice. Taehyung was no longer willing to let him make alone. The midnight pact. That night, back at the dorm, tension vibrated through the walls. Jimin was pacing. Jin was reading, but not really. Yoongi had disappeared for hours. RM was on a call with legal. Hosek was in the kitchen, boiling water with no intention of drinking tea. And then Jungkook walked in, his hoodie soaked in rain, his eyes glowing with something dangerous. "I'm going to do it." Jimin looked up. "Do what?" "Go live tonight," Jungkook stated. "I'm going to talk for real, unfiltered. Not a performance, not a script, not through Weverse Live. A real, raw stream." RM turned sharply. "What?" "I won't say anything that breaks NDA, Jungkook said, "but I'll say the truth. You think that matters to them?" Yoongi appeared from the hallway, arms crossed. "You think the truth protects you?" "No," Jungkook said. "But maybe it protects him." There was silence. Then Jimin walked forward and grabbed Jungkook by the wrist. "Then we go live together." RM shook his head. "This is insane." Yoongi sighed. "No, this is BTS." And so it happened. At 10:14 p.m. Korea Standard Time, BTS went live. Not in suits, not in makeup, just them. 7 men seated in a dimly lit room. Voices raw, eyes tired, but hearts awake. Jungkook spoke first. "We're not here to explain. We're here to speak." Jimin followed. "There's been too much noise, so here's some real sound." Jin. "We're not breaking up." Yoongi. "We're breaking free." Namjoon. "We've spent years polishing our silence, but silence is killing us." Taehyung's name hadn't been mentioned yet until Jungkook turned to the camera and said, "Taehyung is not weak, he's not dramatic, he's not unstable, he's brave. And if you can't understand that, maybe you've forgotten what it means to feel at all." Comments exploded, hearts rained, screenshots were taken by the millions. But the moment that broke the internet wasn't a speech. It was when Taehyung, unannounced, joined the stream. He was messy, oversized hoodie, no filter. "Hey," he said softly. The others froze. "Sorry I'm late." Jungkook didn't say anything. He just reached out and Taehyung took his hand. That single image, Taehyung's shaking fingers, interlaced with Jungkook's steady grip, was screenshotted more times than anyone could count. The stream lasted 25 minutes. It ended not with a statement, but with laughter, real, wounded, alive. The unbreakable chain. Afterward, Hybe's emergency line buzzed for hours. Sponsors called. Lawyers panicked. Stock analysts sent warnings. But the fans said, "Thank you." And in the quiet that followed, Taehyung whispered something only Jungkook heard. "You didn't have to bleed with me." "I didn't," Jungkook replied. "I chose to." The world finally listened. The lights were still on in the Hybe executive suite when Jungkook's name came crashing down in the boardroom like a missile. "He's gone rogue," muttered director Han, watching the silent replay of the live broadcast looping on the massive screen. Jungkook's voice echoed in the space with a calm defiance that made the walls feel like they were shrinking. "He didn't breach NDA," said the compliance manager, beads of sweat forming near her hairline. The CEO's soft war was immediately put into motion. It was subtle, insidious, and perfectly targeted at the core weakness of any global brand: perception. Instead of issuing harsh corporate warnings, Hybe began releasing carefully curated, empathetic content. An official statement was put out, emphasizing the unprecedented pressure and creative isolation the members had faced during their hiatus, positioning the live stream not as an act of rebellion, but as a symptom of exhaustion. News articles, clearly planted by the agency's PR machine, began circulating. They didn't blame Jungkook. They framed him as a figure of tragic exhaustion, a deeply loyal artist cracking under the weight of his own perfectionism. Taehyung, meanwhile, was elevated not in strength, but in delicacy. He was portrayed as the sensitive artist, whose vulnerability was a beautiful burden the other members had to protect. The divide and isolate. The insidious part was the isolation. Namjoon, as leader, was immediately submerged in meetings about risk assessment and brand longevity. These weren't reprimands. They were endless, draining sessions where the lawyers subtly painted a picture of Jungkook's actions as a threat to Namjoon's leadership and the group's financial future. "You understand, Namjoon," the legal director said one afternoon, leaning across the massive boardroom table, "that his impulsive actions directly jeopardize your legacy. You need to guide him back to the structure for the sake of the others." Namjoon felt the crushing weight of the suggestion. He knew the pressure points they were pushing: his sense of responsibility, his role as the mediator, and his deep-seated desire to protect the group's reputation, a reputation that allowed them to speak at the UN and pursue their art freely. Simultaneously, Jin, Hoseok, and Jimin found their schedules suddenly packed with solo content and charity events. The agency wasn't punishing them. They were making them conspicuously busy and successful away from the core conflict. They were becoming the stable wing of BTS, subtly creating a public contrast to the volatility of the two machines. "We need the public to see the maturity and focus of the group during this challenging time," their manager explained with a practiced, neutral smile. "You are the anchors, stabilizing the storm." Jimin felt the manipulation like a dull ache. Every smile for the camera, every eloquent answer in a solo interview felt like a betrayal to Taehyung and Jungkook, who were fighting the real war behind closed doors. He tried to text Taehyung, but the messages were slow to receive, and the replies were sparse. Yoongi's silent surveillance. Yoongi, ever the quiet observer, was the only one who saw the pattern immediately. He retreated to his studio, but he wasn't making music. He was monitoring the digital landscape. He saw the shift in the fan discourse, the subtle, toxic wedge being driven. Jungkook loves Tae, but he's making it worse. He's hurting the group. Why doesn't RM step up and control the situation? He's the leader. Taehyung needs quiet, not this drama. JK is being selfish. The emotional strain was taking its toll. One evening, Yoongi found Hoseok staring blankly at a camera setup, a practiced smile fixed on his face. "Even though the camera was off, they want me to record a message about finding peace in the process of creation," Hoseok muttered. his voice devoid of its usual brightness. They want me to be the joy, so the others can be the drama. Yoongi put a hand on his shoulder. They're trying to turn us against the truth, against each other. I know, Hosok sighed. But what if they're right? What if we are hurting Taehyung more by making this a public fight? Yoongi didn't have an answer. He knew the fight had to be fought, but he also knew Taehyung's deepest fear was becoming a spectacle of pain. Taehyung's Solitude. Meanwhile, Taehyung was struggling in the isolated villa. He had asked for time off, but solitude was a double-edged sword. He expected quiet, but his mind was louder than ever, cycling through the events. He hadn't been expecting the deluge of articles and comments framing him as a victim, the delicate mess. Jungkook's fierce defense, which had felt like steel shielding his heart, was now being spun into proof of his inherent fragility. He felt the familiar shame return, the feeling that he was too much, too complicated, too difficult for the machine. His initial joy at Jungkook's defiance had curdled into fear. He feared the cost to Jungkook's career and the burden placed on the rest of the members to stabilize the brand he had destabilized. He spent his days drawing, not the ethereal, beautiful sketches he usually created, but dark, intense charcoal portraits of fragmented faces, trying to capture the chaos he felt. One night, he received a video call from Namjoon. The leader looked exhausted, the lines of stress around his eyes deeper than ever. "How are you, Tae?" Namjoon asked, his voice low and concerned. "I'm fine. I'm drawing," Taehyung lied, clutching a piece of paper in his free hand. "How's Kook, the others?" Namjoon hesitated. "They're fine, busy. Kook is fighting. You know how he is. He needs a target. Right now, that target is everything. He's burning himself out, Tae." Taehyung felt a sharp twist of guilt. "Tell him to stop. Tell him to focus on his music. He won't listen to us right now," Namjoon admitted honestly. "He's running on pure loyalty. He believes he's the only one who can protect you from them." "I don't need protecting from the world, Hyung," Taehyung said, his voice cracking. "I need protecting from this feeling that I'm the reason the seven of us might break." Namjoon paused, letting the raw honesty hang in the air. "Taehyung, you are the reason we are seven. Never forget that. But right now, we need to fight smart. We need a strategy. We can't just go in screaming." The call ended, leaving Taehyung with a clear, agonizing conviction. He had to do something to stop Jungkook from sacrificing his career for a war Taehyung felt responsible for starting. The unthinkable decision. The next morning, Taehyung messaged RM, "I'm coming back. Tell them I'm ready to record a statement. The Hybe statement. The quiet one." Namjoon was stunned. He called Taehyung immediately. "Are you sure? You don't have to do this, Tae." "I do, Hyung," Taehyung replied, his voice calm, terrifyingly resolute. "Jungkook showed the world his loyalty. Now I need to show the world mine, even if it means wearing the mask again." He knew this would crush Jungkook, but he calculated the move ruthlessly. If the victim himself validated the corporate narrative, Jungkook's recklessness would lose its target and its moral high ground. It was the only way to pull Jungkook back from the brink of burning his career down. It was a sacrifice of his truth for his friend's future. The confrontation in the studio. The group was summoned to a rehearsal studio, ostensibly for a private meeting. Jungkook, who had been cloistered in his apartment, arrived last. He saw Taehyung sitting between Jimin and Jin, composed, pale, wearing a black silk shirt that seemed too formal for the setting. "What's going on?" Jungkook asked, his eyes immediately seeking Taehyung's. Taehyung didn't meet his gaze. RM stepped forward, his face etched with strain. "Taehyung has made a decision. He's going to record a statement for Hybe. The one about needing personal time due to creative stress." The air instantly thickened with a familiar, dangerous silence. Jungkook stared at Taehyung, his brows furrowed in disbelief. "What?" Jungkook's voice was barely a whisper, a sound more wounded than angry. Taehyung finally looked up, his eyes glassy, locked on Jungkook's. "I'm tired, Kook. I'm tired of being a cause. I just want quiet. Your fighting is making it worse." "I'm fighting for you," Jungkook insisted, his voice rising, laced with betrayal. "I stood up so you wouldn't have to carry that weight alone. And now I'm carrying the weight of your fight," Taehyung shot back, standing up slowly. "Look at Hyung. Look at Jimin. You're asking them to choose between their loyalty to you and their commitment to the group. You are creating the instability the press accused me of having? That's unfair, Tae," Jin interjected, but Jungkook cut him off. "I was wrong then," Jungkook said, his posture stiffening, the anger returning, cold and hard. "I thought you wanted to be seen. I thought you wanted to be defended. But you'd rather wear the mask they gave you than let me fight the truth for you. I'm fighting for you now, Taehyung insisted, his voice trembling. I am choosing you over my pain. Jungkook took a step back, his face completely devoid of expression, the silence of a final, irreversible break. Then you choose silence, and you choose to let them win. He turned on his heel and walked out of the studio. No slammed doors, just silence. The rest of the members watched him go, a sense of profound failure settling over them. Taehyung stood there, shaking, tears finally streaming down his face. He had won the internal battle, saving Jungkook from corporate fallout, but he had lost his truth and, seemingly, his closest confidant. Jimin rushed to him, holding him as he sobbed. Yoongi watched the door, his mind already calculating the next move. This wasn't the end of the war. It was the start of a cold, internal civil war. The Fractured Seven, Taehyung's statement, released the next day, was a masterpiece of corporate neutralization. It was brief, elegantly worded, and utterly devoid of the fire Jungkook had ignited. He thanked fans for their empathy, confirmed his brief personal leave to focus on his art and creative recovery, and explicitly asked for privacy regarding the group's internal discussions, implicitly rebuking the media's sensationalism. The headline everywhere was, V confirms exhaustion, requests silence after JK's outburst. The corporate machine cheered internally. The fire was out, but within the walls of the dorm, the atmosphere was suffocating. Jungkook didn't come home that night. He stayed in his private studio, a fortress of defiance. He didn't reply to texts, only sending back cryptic, non-committal emojis to the other members. The remaining 6 were left to manage the fallout, each processing the sacrifice and the resulting strain differently. Yoongi, the architect of silence, Yoongi was the first to act, driven by cold logic. He knew Jungkook's anger was necessary, but Taehyung's submission was strategic. Their conflict was the key. He gathered Namjoon and Jimin in his studio, soundproofing the door. They think they won, Yoongi stated, gesturing to a screen displaying the latest headlines. They think Taehyung validated their narrative, isolating Jungkook. They've successfully separated the fighter from the cause. So what do we do? Jimin asked, his voice low with worry. Jungkook won't speak to any of us. He feels betrayed. We give him a target bigger than Taehyung's mask, Yoongi said. And we remind Taehyung that his sacrifice was seen. Namjoon leaned forward, grasping the plan forming in Yoongi's mind. The album, Yoongi confirmed. They're trying to control our messaging and isolate our artists. We hit them where they can't censor us. The music. We write the statement not in words, but in tracks. Every single truth that we couldn't speak on that stream, we bury in the lyrics. They drafted a covert plan. The new album, currently in its final stages, needed an overhaul. They would secretly shift the focus, weaving in themes of corporate exhaustion, the burden of fame, and the unbreakable bond of loyalty. Yoongi would handle the production, masking the lyrical edits until the very last minute. Namjoon would manage the legal and PR risks, using his influence to navigate the deadlines. This will be the only way to validate what Jungkook fought for without destroying Taehyung's fragile peace, Yoongi concluded. We fight the soft war with soft resistance. J-Hope and Jin, the emotional shields. Hoseok and Jin took on the role of emotional shields, particularly for the 2 youngest. Jin, with his easy humor and unwavering stability, focused on maintaining the group's practical routines. He cooked meals, insisted on movie nights, and talked about everything but the conflict. He knew the simple act of normalcy was a form of defiance against the chaos Hybe was attempting to sow. He made a point of delivering food to Jungkook's isolated studio. Jungkook would open the door just enough to grab the bowl, never meeting Jin's eyes. "Eat, Kook," Jin would say, his voice gentle. "Your fire needs fuel. Don't starve yourself just because the world is cold." Hoseok, meanwhile, became the bridge to the outside world. He continued his packed schedule, but every public appearance was a subtle protest. He wore the color purple exclusively,